Yeah, I think let's get going. So, good evening and welcome everyone to the September meetup. I can't believe we're 9 months into the year already. It seems like we're flying through at the moment. Yeah, exactly. So, just for those who are online, just please keep yourself muted during the session. We are recording this and we are uploading them to our YouTube channel so people can catch up laterwards or afterwards. So tonight we're going to go through just some updates within the news. We're then going to talk about building Power Apps using SharePoint. This is usually a swear word, but you can build out some great solutions inside. So you guys are going to take us through what you've done. Okay. Uh, David, you're doing a tech tip tonight? So we're going to hand over to you and you can take us through everything for the. Okay, perfect. And then we'll have an open floor and discussions area. Just very quickly, thank you to Okavuma for sponsoring the pizza and drinks and everything for tonight. Do appreciate that. So well done. Thanks for that. No. Okay, so just quickly in the news, some of the new features that is being brought in. Now, application users are going to be able to filter galleries using copilots. Okay. So in the past, you could use it as an administrator or when you're building out an app, get it to help build your functions and that to filter it out correctly. Now the application users have the ability to use Copilot to get it to filter those things effectively. So instead of you having to build in filters or ways to filter for them or searches, they will be able to use Copilot for that coming out. They can actually use natural language and it will be able to bring it out for them directly. Yeah, that's going to be really cool. And it's going to be much easier for people to access the information that they need. It's in private preview at the moment, so it's busy rolling out. Okay. Uh, yes, yeah. From what I was reading, those filters will be default, and then it's filtering based off of that information that is coming through. They'll be able to say exactly what they want to see and what they want to get out of it. Okay. Only available in Canvas apps, of course, and it'll be available to the users. It started rolling out on the 29th of July. It's going to roll out to all regions within the couple of weeks. So, yes, yeah. So it rolled out to the US first, and now it's busy pushing out to the rest. Yes, 100%. And if you've already got apps that you've built, you've got to republish them, and then the feature will be available for you to make use of. Okay. From an administrator's perspective, there's a couple of features that we've brought in. The ability now to delete application users on the platform is now available. In the past, you could deactivate them, but you couldn't delete the application users. So now we're bringing in the feature that you can actually delete the users out of the environment. Very similar to if you had any stub users, any users that got removed from groups or anything like that, they would still reside in Dataverse. We're now bringing in the screens and the options to go in and delete those users as well, so you can clean it up. Yeah, absolutely. So now, especially if you're trying to follow any privacy laws and regulations, one of the requirements is cleaning up that user information. So now you will be able to do that. This is now generally available. Okay. Um, we're also bringing in a Copilot page in the Power Platform Admin Center. So this is going to give you quick and easy access to things like educational resources, how to learn a bit more about Copilot. It's also giving you usage analytics. So who's using Copilot in Power Apps and Power Automate, Pages and Copilot Studio. So you'll get that bit of usage insights in there. It will also give you information on governance controls and how they're being enabled in the organization, and then also content moderation information so that you can see how you're shedding light on your responsible AI practices. Okay. To pull through. Yeah, no, I haven't seen anything on that yet. Hopefully within the coming weeks. Okay. What else was there? Yeah. Also now the SAP OData connector. This is in public preview at the moment. In the past, it supported basic, anonymous, and also API key authentication. It now also supports single sign-on as long as you're doing it through Azure API management. Okay, so now you can bring in that single sign-on into that experience as well. From a Power App desktop perspective, you now have the ability to run subflows dynamically. So in the past, you had to go and specify what the subflow is for it to execute and run. Now you can have it as a variable and you can push through to that depending on how the flow goes. So this can help simplify your creation of flows quite drastically on the desktop. Copilot Studio, upcoming features. So in Copilot, I'm sure you've seen, if you've used Microsoft 365 Copilot, it gives you suggestions on prompts you can use. Where like you're asking a question, it can say, hey, try this or do that. It's in PowerPoint, in Excel, in Word, in Teams, it's giving those suggestions. We're now bringing that capability into your custom Copilots as well. Based on the type of connectors that you have available into it and the type of functions that it is, it can start suggesting some of those items for you directly. Okay. Also bringing in the ability to get responses from uploaded images. So now you can upload an image and get it to explain it to you, and we'll be able to provide that context inside there on custom Copilots. Also, more insights and information on how your custom Copilots are performing. You'll be able to get an understanding of what their performance is, what the feedback is from the users on there, the type of themes and questions that are being asked. So you can see there's a lot of effort going into making sure that these Copilots are available and they're giving you the information that you need in order to improve them moving forward. Okay. Perfect. Was there anything anyone else picked up in the news or anything else that they would like to talk about? Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. And with that, we're going to have a look at building Power Apps on SharePoint. And you can just plug in to HDMI and on the inside. Yep.
How's it, guys? So enterprise Power Applications with it. Can you, am I there? Is it too far? There, better. Yeah. Enterprise Power Applications without premium licenses. Question everybody gets asked daily. So, am I going to have to buy a license for this application or not? Easy as that. If you haven't heard that question, you haven't been outside in a while. So the idea was planting the seed because we use the Office 365 seeded license at the end of the day. Now, we all agree that in a perfect world, we all want to use the Dataverse or, premium connectors to leverage our data because it's quick, it's fast, the scalability, the effortless way of connecting to data and managing it is pretty cool. But is there a way around it for clients who do not have the ability or the affordability to get these licenses? Well, I think we can honestly say that yes, there is. I mean, we have a client which we've deployed a beautiful large scale environment where they have multiple Power applications with an enormous amount of records within the SharePoint running smoothly, perfectly. But it's all about how you set it up. And I'm going to take you through how we do it. As such, just a couple of slides. And then from there, we'll look at the application or an application, which I've leveraged some of the ideas on how we do it. And I'll show you how we set it up in SharePoint and how we go through a business process. And then from there, we'll come back to the slides to have a look at what are the benefits in doing it this way. And it's not, at one stage we say cost versus the seeded option. It's not really versus, because each one has its own effect or each one has its own benefits. So, and it's all about proper design, adoption, and methodology. But in short, yes, it's possible. It's quite possible. It's plausible. It's executable. We've done it. We know it works. It's tried and tested. So here's just a small little write-up. I mean, you guys, I'm not going to read it through for you. You guys can have a look. But in short, what are the allowed data sources if we follow the seeded approach? Is SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, Excel, Outlook, Dynamics 365, as well as limited, because there is some storage capabilities that are always being leveraged in Dataverse when you do Canvas applications. And then using SharePoint as a data source. SharePoint is, to me, I mean, it's a standard. We've all been using it for years and years and years. It's a powerful tool. If you know what you're doing in SharePoint, it is horses for courses. It's unmatched in what it's designed to do. There's a reason why it's the industry standard. So, but in Canvas applications, if you don't leverage it correctly, it can become slow. So utilizing a proper design methodology and architecture will be key at the end of the day. So yes, there are limitations if you do not use the seeded approach. If you use the seeded approach, the SQL connectors, leveraging APIs, those type of things are off the table for you. You cannot use them. No, you're not using them. Yeah. Yeah. You don't look that way. All right. So essentially, when you have an Office 365 license, you get what they call the seeded license, which allows you then obviously to connect to SharePoint and some other data sources, which we discussed on the previous slide, Excel, OneDrive, Outlook, and yeah. So how do we build it? How do we do it as such? So for an enterprise, what we usually do is we will have a main SharePoint site. This SharePoint site will be dedicated to the Power applications. We're not leveraging their SharePoint site, which they use as their enterprise communication platform or document I wanted to say database, but it's not database. It's their document libraries and so forth. So go for it. Go for it. Go for it. Yeah, and for those of you who didn't know, that's the brains of the operation. So yeah, and then what we would do is we would create then lists within that main site for data which is globally shared across all applications. So this would be stuff like um, departments, those type of things. So the organization, the organizational structure, those type of things. Um, Not the sub-departments, because we would drop that into the departments as such, and those type of things. You would global variables, these type of things, setting up lists for those access. So register, so the application register. So what I'll show you is a dashboard that we have, which leverages SharePoint, where users would access that dashboard. The dashboard would show them the applications which they have access to. They would select in that application, and that register, that application register, sits in the main site. From there, it will take them to that application. Now, why do we do it that way? The reason we do it that way is that people don't bookmark pages where the applications are. So now you build a new application, you don't want them to use that URL anymore. So what do? We access it through the dashboard. It also gives us functionality to run specific protocols prior to them accessing that dashboard, to let them know what tasks are assigned to you. So you log in there, you pop in, you say, hey, I've got 17 tasks overdue. Where is it? Oh, it's in this application. And there they go. And then from there, we will have a sub-site under the main site. Yeah. Yeah, and I think all of us have had that conversation with our clients and say, how do we get people to start using the applications instead of sending me these emails all the time? And that is one of the keys to this. Then obviously the subsite, which will be department based, or whichever way the organization is structured. Some people don't have departments, they've got business units. Other people have silos, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, as the organization is divided up into, and with some matrix organizations, I promise you, it does get kind of tricky where these lists should sit and shouldn't sit, but we managed to figure it out halfway. So, and under these, this is typically where your application, the application data does not actually sit within your subsite. This is typically, once again, organizational structures. Who is this person? Who is the manager of this BU? That's what typically sits in there. The role assignments, those type of things, so that when the applications function, they know where to leverage this data. Then you have what the sub-site to that site. Now, within that sub-site, this is where the application data sits. This is where we map out the business processes. This is where we have the workflow history. This is where we have the application data itself, each record of what that application transaction. if I can call it that. This is where that sits at the end of the day. And by leveraging this model, we have been able to build low cost, because it's not for free, guys. You need a Microsoft 365 license. It's not for free. But by leveraging this approach, we've been able to successfully deploy multiple applications in large enterprises, and it's been working well for us. I mean, we'll look at the what's his name. We'll look at the benefits now. But I'm just going to open the. Sorry. Oh, E3 includes what's his name? Yeah, it includes it. Yeah. I love the way when you say that, you just see everybody go, no. It would be lovely to actually show you guys what we've done. Yeah. So my idea was to think of somebody who does not have the money to deploy Dataverse. Topic, school. They have various departments, various needs for applications, and so forth. So I did a school. By the way, my logo is designed by Copilot. Thank you, Copilot. And so this is the dashboard. You would come in here, you would see that I have now signed in. It obviously identifies me, and it sees that I've got 3 outstanding items. So what I've done, and that is on the first level, on the main page, there is what is called an item list. Now, this doesn't leverage any data. What it does is it's got a record ID, and it just tells me, tells me who's it assigned to and what is the step date. So by when is it due? So because obviously everybody who has access to this needs to have access to that list, but you don't want to leverage, as you just said, specific records which people, or fields that people are not privileged to. So, and then I can go, okay, so what am I, so I have 3 leave requests which are due. And by leveraging this, so all my applications which I have access to, and there's a lot more, I'll show you the application register. There's a lot more than this. But all the applications that I have access to is now identified here, and I can look under there, and let's say we go to leave management. And this is the business process I'd like to show you at the end of the day, which we've also outlined within SharePoint. And I'll open the business process to you, and you guys can have a look at it. But this is fairly simple. I mean, it is leave manage. I can apply for new leave, or I can see what has been assigned to me, and then I can approve as such. So here is one that is line manager approval. Now, oh, there's the new Copilot sort and filter search. It hurt us. We can test it out. So basically click on that, and I can say edit. Now currently it's with line manager approval. as such. So I can then, this is a gallery which dynamically populates from the source, and as it moves on, this changes. The business process, as the business process goes on, it gives you specific options. So if it was a new record, which I'll show you now, it will just tell you submit. So you've saved your record, now you submit it to your line manager. When the line manager opens it, like I have done now, it says line manager approval, and I can have approve or reject or request information. If I say request information, it will go back, and I have to then obviously add some data, and then I have to resubmit it, and then it goes through the process again. Simple business process. So now I say approve. I'm going on paternity leave, hopefully not. Seeing that the 9-month topic did come up. And then obviously I can select it again, edit, and let's say I reject it. Now by rejecting it, it's going to reject it. Or I can take this one. And I'm very unhappy about that Copilot filter popping up because it's in my way. It's not popping up in the right places. And we can comment and say, happy to approve. And it's been completed. Now, there's a lot of stuff that up here we can, there's a new one, we can create a new one, it populates in there, it assigns whoever. There's various things that I, unfortunately, were not able to leverage, which we do use. And I think David will touch more on that. And it's this portion on how does it assign it to the next person and the next person and the next person. So we have obviously within that environment, we've got a lot of flows running that will look to see, okay, so who is the manager to assign it to, and it does that automatically. So it goes and looks at you. Or you could utilize the Office 365 connector, which says, who is the line manager? I mean, it's up to you how you want to do it, which is once again, also not a premium connector, which means low cost at the end of the day. You'll see that I purposely move away from the no cost word because it is not no cost, because you have to have licenses. It's not a free environment. You have to have the license at the end of the day. So it's very nice of Microsoft to give us these, these additional features. That is correct. So the logic, and I'll show you, maybe I should show you the logic first, how it does it. But I actually want to show you the logic with, because the logic, yes, there's logic within PowerFX that shows you where it needs to go, and it does that calculation. But the logic is actually within how we set up the business of the process options and the process steps.
The idea is that you don't hard code any of the process type information in the Canvas app. So the PowerFX that checks what the next step is, and all of that should be generic, so that you, once you go and set up the process in SharePoint, which Dennis will show now, it automatically lights up in the Canvas app. So, and I think the alternative, you know, the old way, if I call it that, of doing that is having multiple screens in the app representing different steps in the process, in which you then duplicate the forms with the same data, but then the forms, you go and hide certain fields and make certain fields editable, which is fine if you've got one or two processes or one or two steps in the process. But the problem is, if you've got a large, like a 20-step process, it becomes an absolute dog's breakfast very soon. Because now what happens is, the end of the project, the client says, I love this system. Yes, it works well, but we want to add one field. So you're going to go and you're going to add it in the data source. You're going to add it on 20 different forms. And that's where bugs come from. Because now on form number 17, you made a typo and you don't pick it up until it goes into production. And under a very specific user scenario, that bug becomes available. And now people recognize that there's a problem. I hate cop. I've seen where you go and set up the first screen and you go and duplicate that screen. You shouldn't do that.
So this process, I will tell you, is not something that was thought up in a week before the what's his name, before the PUG. That I would say that I only started with the presentation, but this is architecture that has been developed over years. The way that it's been set up, the thought process. Now, to add on to what David is saying, is that put yourself in the shoes where you can deploy a business process by literally setting up a SharePoint site, defining the field, going into your Canvas app, which is your boilerplate as such, making a copy, opening it up, pointing it to your data source and going deploy. There's no coding, nothing going on in there. Might be one or two, change the header to, this is now not a leave application, this is a gift application, or application to go to whatever, or for I want to buy stationery, whatever. Just think about it, it's there. All you need to do is go and define, and defining your business process is going to be the hardest part. Usually is. So this is the school. Welcome. Now the first thing is what I said to you. Now, I've now done this just to make it look nice for you guys, but we do not use the public or global or organizational communication SharePoint site to leverage the Power Apps. Number one. So I'm going to go to, let's go to, so you'll see there's already a couple of lists here as such. And I'm just going to go to site contents, show you. And these are the lists which are usually commonly shared within all applications. So when you have an application, all of them will have access to that. The application register, and that tells the dashboard which applications are available to you or whoever. Now, unfortunately, in that one, it's just a list and a URL, and open it up for you. You guys can see. So the application name, the department to which this application belongs to, and then obviously I use SVGs for the icons, and then is the application. So the line manager button will tell you, does your line manager have access to your records? That's that one. Is it active? So I can literally go on, if I decide I'm going to deploy a new application, just turn it off. It's a button. Easy as that. And then this, if you think about it, it's basics. We've just taken the basics and brought them together to become something pretty cool. And you can go access grow. So what we usually do, so there is an access group here, and what we leverage the groups here. So it will then check, and this we do in the back end. But we will add a user to a group. And if you're not in that group, you don't have access. And that group is usually with who that the page, the site is shared with, the subsite. 80 groups. Yeah. So now, obviously, if you're not in that group, you won't be able to see the application. You won't be able to see the data within that application.
If you do that right and you plan the group architecture correctly, if somebody joins the organization, they get added to one group. And then the rest should light up around that. So if you're using nested groups, that should give people access to all the resources that they need to access that app. So, typically, if you don't do that again, you've got a Canvas app and you've got a SharePoint list, and then the guy tries and creates an attachment, and it gets an error you don't have access, and you have to go in and log a call, and you get access to the SharePoint library, and then it carries on like that for 6 months. Where if you do it properly and you added them to one group, all the resources just light up for that user.
Where it does become a little tricky is when a person sits in multiple groups. So the trickiness does not come in once you've been given access to it. The trickiness comes in. So once a person joins the group, or what joins the organization, they usually get added to the group. You sit in sales, you get added to sales. You get access to it. But now all of a sudden you want to have access to engineering, you want to have access to chemical, you want to have access to this, and managing that. So yes. So and envisaging that and seeing it and making it visual. So what we've actually also done is use a Canvas app to identify these groups as well per application. And unfortunately, I don't have it in this environment, but per application. So you can click on the application and you can see which groups have access to it. And you can click on a person, you can see which groups he is in, leveraging that capability. And you can dynamically add and remove people within a Canvas application to those groups and take them away from those groups as well. So this is typically one of the overhead lists which drives department types. And then driving the dashboard. Nothing more than this sits within the dashboard. And when you look at the item list, so you can expose this because it doesn't give you the gist of anything else bar the record ID, the title, and that's it. And it tells you what application it comes from. That's it. So by exposing this, you're not giving people access to information, because if they want to click on that record, which I just use the text, I don't even use a lookup column for that. If you want to click on that to go find it, you're not going to, because you don't have access to that record. Easy as that. So now we're going to go into it a little bit deeper. And now we're going to go into the school administration office. And my apologies, guys. I only had time to create one department. So the school administration department was the first one who got an application. So within here, there is no lists within this one. I didn't have the need, but I promise you there are situations where you will populate this with lists.
Then all the apps that form part of this department will automatically have access to this site collection with the necessary lookup lists only for that department. So it gives you the ability to really segregate the data down to the actual app level.
And then obviously a subsite under here, and the first subsite is this application called Leave Management. Entering Leave Management, you will immediately see these are the lists that we leverage to power this. Process state, process steps, process reference code, and there's method to each one of these. The roles which gets assigned to the user as he adds a record. Are you the requester? Are you the line manager? Are you the HR manager who approves it at the end of the day? And We've used generic terminology. You can use anything that you want. If you want to call it requester, intermediary approver, CEO, manager, project manager, whatever you want to call it, you populate that with it. Yeah, that's it. And assigning the role as you go on. And by assigning that responsible user, you can then limit the access or the editability of that record. So you can literally say, if he's not that person, who can edit this? It's only the responsible user. So if you are the responsible user, you can edit that record. If you're not the responsible user or the administrator, sorry, bro, you can see it because you've got access to the site, but you can't edit it. Yeah, or you cannot. So, I mean, in your filter, you can say if it's not responsible user, sorry, or in SharePoint, whichever way you want, both ways. And then obviously we have the system variables. So if there's any system variables, any presets you want to load, that you can pop them in there. And then the workflow history. So we leverage this to basically record every step, everything that happens in this application. You got a log file. And this now you have traceability. So let's see the life cycle, and I'll open it for you. We can have a look. And now you can see the life cycle of that record, how it was. Sorry. I apologize. But yeah, now you can see there's the life cycle. So you can see I tested this one a couple of times, right? But yeah. And then it also tells, so that's the record reference as such. It also tells you, has the next step been initiated or not? And then, so our naming convention, we usually use the word form, though it's not a form as such. We just use the form. That is where the data, the physical application data, the records that have been created, goes and sits. And then you can see up there, that's the one I just rejected. It tells you in which process step it currently is and what type, the fields you saw me fill in at the end of the day. And then what we also have is what we call a row summary. So this row summary saved, I think it was the first argument that David and myself had, because he told me to go look at the source. And I go, oh! But yeah, the row summary is basically, so you can leverage just by sending the record ID, instead of going to say, I want this row, I want this row, I want this row, leverage the row summary, gives you a brief overhead, and we usually leverage this. So when you're in the dashboard and you've got certain applications where you want to do a quick approval, to say that it pops up just with the row summary, go approve, done, close. So you can use that as a little short abbreviation of the entire column or of the entire record as such.
The other thing that gives you is on the front end, on the dashboard, for an example, you don't need to actually go and link that front end to the data source. So if you deploy a new app, you don't need to create a new version of that the dashboard. You don't need to go and customize that Canvas app. That just reads the system register, and it calls a flow that'll go and check what's the row summary for these records, and it'll present it to the user so that you can see in the front end. So I have a leave approval that's due for me, but the fields that might be relevant for a leave approval might be different to a CapEx request. So there you just concatenate the relevant fields for that record that gets surfaced in things like the dashboard or in email notifications, that you don't end up building custom email notifications for every process. So then you've got a generic, you've got one template. If you do this correctly, you've got one email template that drives every email notification for 100 processes. So if the client does a CI change, you go and update that, and the metadata, like what's the next step, how long you've got to action that step, all of those things are driven through the business process, and none of it's through hard coding it in the actual Canvas apps and flows and all of these sort of things in 100 different places.
So we actually, in the enterprise environment, we use a flow to populate that and push it through. In my application here, I use logic within PowerFX to concatenate it. But there are various ways you can leverage it. You could do it that way as well, in which that's usually what I do, but mm, mm, yeah, yeah. I haven't really tried it again, but yeah. But yeah. So there are various ways that you could do it. A calculated column is probably the nicest way to do it, though. As David says, I don't know if you've because if you change any other data within here, you would like it to auto update on that side. So, but yeah, the whole thing is don't edit your data within the SharePoint site. Help me. Because yeah. Mm. So you'll only be able to break your records. Mm. Yeah, it does. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes. And the HR manager. So the creator will always have access to it. And unless you have a specific, because we do have business processes where we also, once the user has submitted, he will not be able to see that record until it's been approved. So you break that entire. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do leverage a service account. Mm. Mm. That's
what we're finding with Copilot for M365 is many people have built apps on top of SharePoint lists, but they've essentially put the security model in the app. not in the list. And it's all been fine because they've gone and done stuff like, it's not, I don't know, you can do a few settings in SharePoint, so when they come to it, the list's hidden and stuff like that, but fundamentally, they still actually have access to the records. And so so if you use something like Graph Explorer, you'll get to it. And what's happening now with Copilot is people are asking questions and they're finding this stuff because it's using the graph under the hood. So that's why I was asking is, are you doing it at a UI level, or are you actually changing the permissions at a data level? Otherwise, people will start finding this stuff if you're not. And it's not just, I'm just saying to everyone on the call, and just, something to think about. Yeah. No.
I think that's that's an extremely valid point and something to note. But yeah, and just to reiterate what David said, if you've broken the access, it should stop there. Right, and then we all obviously just leave types. That's just a little lookup list. Just that's how I populate my drop downs. Easy as that. But this essentially could have also just been one level up. Not sensitive data. It just uses this to what's. You could have even made this available in the top level site, because there might be other applications that want to have a look at this, and you might want to leverage this in a filter or wherever, or drop down. Role assignments. Why is that blank? That wasn't blank. And then obviously this is the site contents in a whole. But I think let's start with the process steps and how we actually put this together. So these are the steps in your business process. And imagine how nice it would be, because it is that way here, that tomorrow an additional approval step has to come in. Compliance comes around and says, listen here, guys, we're quite happy that you've got the line manager and the HR manager in, but we would like you to add the business unit manager as well as an approval step before it gets released. Because sometimes the line manager doesn't know the business requirements, and we sit in a matrix organization, and sometimes we would like to leverage resources from one department to the next, something like that. And all you would do is add it in here. Just one little line. And it becomes a step. You would go to your process step options, and that's the key, the option key. So now if it's moved on to a next step, in what step should it become available? And you would add it to where is this option available? Where is this step available? So, sorry, other way around. So once it is in a step, it will look at the option key, and then it will say what is available, and I'll show you the logic now in the application. What options are available to you, leveraging that option set, and then all you do is you select approve, reject, decline in this step, and it moves it to the next step. Whether it is rejected, which then stops it, or whether it is resubmit or approve or so forth. If we go back to the process steps there, so rejected, as you see, instructions 0, expected time 0. And then obviously this is also very important. This is your sort order. So in which step does this happen? What is the first step? What is the second step? What is the third step? What is the fourth step? These we just push up to a very high number because, I mean, once this has happened, nothing should happen. It's completed, rejected, or cancelled. Then it's dead. So it just follows these, one after the other. Now I have a new step, which needs to come in here, HR manager approval. So before the HR manager approves it, I will put in a line here, well, at the bottom, because you can't put in a line there, but put in a line at the bottom. I would make that step 5, and I will put the expected duration in there.
So that sort order is just for display. It doesn't actually drive the process. So it's just the options drive which steps it go to. It's just so that if you display it, that it, you know, on certain reports or whatever, that it displays it in the correct order to the user, but it doesn't actually drive the process per se.
Yes, I didn't follow his architecture there. I'm sorry. But yeah. So now let's go here. I'm going to go to Power Ups. Where's Power Ups? Sorry, I was trying to get into something here. Yeah. So, so so I'll show. It's actually in the so the one I called leave application form. That's where they are. So good question. I might not have. So there, that's where they're all captured. So this is the one where it populates from. So we've been lucky in most cases, the client would come and say, this is the form we'd like to automate. Cool. But in a lot of cases they don't. And then you just sit down in a little meeting and we decide, what is it that you need? And as we all know, that then grows, because now I know, okay, I need a process step that you don't define on. Okay. So I need an option. I need to know what is the options, where does it go? All those type of things. And then, yeah, we build this. And cascading effects, those type of things. So this form doesn't cater for it as such. Mm. The on that point is the idea is to do it as minimalistic as possible. So we stick to using the same layout as such, changing the data source, and then obviously each form is different. So there will be fields that say, so when I'm in the edit step, I'm going to go in there to say that when this is either in line manager approval, let's say your leave type. So line manager or HR approval, the leave type is not editable because I've asked for paternity leave. You can't tell me I must take annual leave. You can reject it and I can apply again. So what we would do is you would take that drop down and you would say that if the process step has in the word line manager approval or HR manager approval, then it is in a view mode. Else, edit. Easy as that. So you would, the idea is not to say you'll never build another Canvas app again. The idea is to say that you can build now, because you're leveraging SharePoint, you can build as many as you want, because it's not per app licenses. Firstly. Secondly, the development time, and that's what I said, we will get into that with the pros and cons. The development time is extremely reduced, because you don't have to rebuild this whole interface, and you don't have to build page for page for page for page to cater for each view. That is what the architecture gives you. Let me open the logic as such. And please don't comment on my code. I'm not as brilliant as most of you guys, you know. Stop it. Let's see how quickly it opens. Any questions so far? Any ideas? Any improvements? Okay, so funny thing, which I've always been doing my entire life, and there's a lot of coders that do it this way, or app builders that do it this way. I always have a loading screen, and I utilize the loading screen. It'll always take 5 seconds. The timer is set just to set certain variables and so forth. There are easier ways of doing it, but that's the way I do it, and it works for me. So it just runs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it'll fade in and it'll come in here. So so I didn't have time to do it, but I've done it, and I'm using the tab control, the new modern tab control, and I'm using utilize that in various applications, which you can actually use that to set the sorting order. This gives a nice little look and feel to that. But what I want to show you is, I'm doing the play, and I can press Alt, but one hand's busy. So let's just say assign to me, and I'm going to go, because I want to show you that logic. So the first logic I want to show you is the edit one. Okay, so I haven't selected a record here, but so as you see there it selects the process step, so it assigns it to the new step. And how I get to that is I've got a gallery here. Let me select it. Pretty simple. So all I do is I look at the process. So I take the records step key, and I go look up the value in process steps, and I give it this sort order. So use sort order there. That's where I changed from your architecture. And I'm sorry for that, David. And that gives me the approve or reject. And once I do submit, there's the logic which assigns it to the next. That just moves it on, assigning it to. Now, I hard-coded this, the HR manager and the responsible person, because I didn't have the ability all the time to go build those core functions in our environment. But there are various ways of leveraging that to assign it to the next person. And that's why I said you could either use the Office 365 connector if you've set up the line management within Office 365 to say, who is your line manager? Or go look up the HR manager. You can leverage that. Or you could use a flow. That's the way we do it. We use a flow, which breaks the responsibility from you and assigns it to the next person. Of crowd. Here I populate the item list, and this, once again, it sits at the global level, and for that gives the the dashboard the juice. So when you sign in, you can see this is my job. I need to do it, get it done. Once it's done, it's out, moves it in the item list, and then obviously, and that's it.
So there's one or two items that Tinus hard-coded there, but the idea is that that is the logic in the app. So if you do it correctly and you add new steps and processes, you never have to go and change that the formula in the application that drives the business process. So that's the idea behind this. So if you and Tinus will get to the benefits of that, but if in future you need to create a new app, you take this boilerplate, you put it down, you build the process, and you're off to the races. So that's essentially the idea with all of this.
Yeah, it's the loading screen, which literally leverages the lists within the overarching SharePoint site. So that's the only thing that, and it's the list screen. You could change this data source to something else right now, and it'll work. As long as you keep the field names the same. Easy as that. Because the juice of what you want, the approval steps, the information that fuels the forms, sit in the process step options and in the process steps. So this filter that's built here that that's generic. You're just going to change the data source name, and it's going to populate. Yes, obviously you're going to get one or two errors, and you're just going to go in and change it because you probably wrote a process with a capital P and a capital ROS instead of PROS, or you didn't capitalize it at all, or somebody used camel case instead of using something else. It does happen, but it's going to be one or two little nitty-gritty things that you're going to change, and you have an interface to manage your business process from. There. What are the rewards? Now, just something I did forget to mention, because we do touch base on it here, but now, as David said, you build in the submit button, you have a notification, an email notification that goes out. You leverage the row summary. You don't need to rebuild that process. It's there already. All you've done is you've changed the data source, made one or two adjustments, poof, and you've publicized. You've pushed it out. It's there. Faster deployable apps. Generic functions and controls allow for applications to be copied and tied into new data sources. Less developed, and I'm not saying that you can't do this in Dataverse. You can. It is a lot better in Dataverse, don't get me wrong. But it comes at a cost, and it's not a lot. Somebody has to fly it red. So, but this gives you an option at the end of the day. Now, 9 times out of 10, any of us who sit around the table, a client asks you what data source I'm going to leverage, we're going to go data source, Dataverse, SQL, those type of things. But when a client does come to you and he says to you, listen, yeah, I've got this, it could work. It does work. It's not could work, it does work. less development time and alteration. So you can use the exact same architecture which we've just shown you here to leverage it in Dataverse, and you will have the exact same benefits. In fact, you're probably going to have a solution that's a lot faster. But the topic at hand is a lower cost effect, and that's what this is. Less component and functionality depending. Something that it's becoming a big topic on my side, and I don't know if any of you guys are finding it, but people are building millions of controls into single screens. Screens are becoming very component dependent. You know, now you have 20 fly-ins all of a sudden to do this, do this. I don't want to do a new screen. I just add another container, and I'll make it fly in and out. And within that container, there's 15, 16 controls. It's a topic. It does happen. This process limits that. User intuitive and application aptitude. The nice thing about this is the look and feel, the style, the process you follow remains the same. So when a user has used one of your applications and the next application pops up in the dashboard, 9 times out of 10, he or she will have the capability to operate that application without any issues. Freedom to deploy as many or as little apps as you want. If you want to do everything in one application, do it in the dashboard, you can do it. But do you want 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 apps? You can do that as well, without falling into that inferno or that vacuum of cost. Centralized logic. Logic remains the same. Processes remain the same. Generic reports. Now, the nice thing about this is because all your data sources look the same and follow the same structure, building reports is a lot easier, a lot quicker. And integrating two data sources with one another to amalgamate into one report is also a lot easier. Easily update the front end without rewriting logic. It did happen. So the nice thing about it, and once again, I'm going to say it again, if you want to change your process, a business manager comes to you and say, we need to change this process. You don't need to redeploy the app. Centralized task lists for all systems. That's what we showed you regarding the item list. Makes it quite easy. It's lekker, it's fun. Going into something, we've got one central place. I don't have to go look through emails to find what is my job to do today. This is, oh, I've got 15 tasks to approve. Let me go do that quickly. Easy as that. Pop in, and everybody knows where the app is. Nobody's going to tell you, I didn't know we had an app for that. It's all there. Generic workflows, we've discussed that. Agile business processes. We've spoken about that as well. So, yeah, that's me on this topic.
So just on that generic workflow and escalation emails as well, as part of the process steps, you have a thing that says how long should this typically take. So if you say that this step should take 5 days, then you've got generic escalation emails that reminds the user that something is on his task list before it hits that date, and then after that date, it automatically flags it on the dashboard as being overdue, which is a lot easier than having to write custom logic for every scenario that could possibly determine if something is late, so because that becomes a very complex conversation to say, well, when should we send reminders? Where if you structure it in such a way, it's completely generic and you can update on the fly in the SharePoint process steps.
Are you creating like a base solution that you deploy multiple times, which means you've got the exact same flows, but multiple instances of them? Or are you reusing the same flow across all the applications? Does that kind of make sense? So that there's logic to write workflow history or whatever it is. Is it one flow for all of them, or do you just reproduce the same flow n times? One flow.
And that's what David touched upon, you know, the core that we publish. So the core has all those in. So yeah, to write the row summary is one. All you do is you connect it to each one of the apps. One.
Yeah, so where it becomes interesting is where your triggers change, because sometimes you would have a trigger that needs to, for an example, a good place to send email notifications from is on the workflow history. So the moment that a record lands in the workflow history item, then there's a flow that listens to that history and says, okay, this is submitted. Where's it gone? It went to step 10, whatever the line manager approval. It goes and reads the business process logic in SharePoint for what is the description for that step, who's the responsible role, and it generates that email. But that trigger is different based on the solution. So what we do is we have the core workflow solution that contains all the core logic, and a lot of those are child flows. And then we have separate solutions for each one of the actual processes. And then that would have the trigger that ultimately just calls the child flow and passes some parameters to it. So it passes, it's not hard coded, so it passes the SharePoint site and the SharePoint list ID to that central flow, and then that flow knows where it needs to go and look for it. So whenever you go and create a new solution, the idea is you don't need to update any of the generic and core workflow solutions or process solutions.
It's not as easy as it sounds. I promise you. I've been working on that environment for 4 months. I still get caught out. So, yeah. But he's like an encyclopedia when it comes to flows. So, and anyway, so just a little tech tip quickly. Gonna get it out of the way. I'm done. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys, some of you might have seen it, so please don't spoil it for the other ones. But the ability for users in the user interface to change their theme dynamically. You get that quite often to say, I like it dark, I like it white. David said to me today, Tinus, that thing's too dark, I can't see the select button. Okay, so you're going to be the first one to get one of these. And it's pretty easy. And thanks again to Microsoft for launching the theme portion of it, because that is what powers this. And you can basically just click. And there it is working. Let's go to something more dynamic. There you go, to see that it is working. And so this works only on the modern controls, which has the theme function tag in there. So only they are able to, because I promise you I did try it with firstly just populating, and then I realized, okay, it's not working. But yeah, and the nice thing about this is if you are in your application and you've designed your theme already, and I'll show you now how it works. If you've designed your theme in your application, it's there. So if I go, I'm just going to put the mic down for a second. There you go. All you need to do is go to your, so unfortunately, I haven't found a way. I'm sure there are a lot of smarter people than me out there. Haven't found a way to leverage the theme source as such, but all you literally need to do select your theme, close your brackets, and there's fun theme in there. So now you can use, I'm using a radio list. You can use whatever you want. You can use a drop down. You can use a gallery on a select function. whatever you want to do. And now I've broken it. I know why. So once you've added a new item to the source, you go into the app, select theme, the theme function, and you point it to your variable. You create a variable which is here. Once we click there and I click there, it should tell me here. And those are the properties that it sets. And now, don't bite me. We go there, we go there, we go there. So now if you have users who would like something that plays a little bit more, you want something that gives a little bit more contrast, you can do that. You can even create storage space so it can remember the user's preferences at the end of the day. And when he or she signs into your app, I'll have that. All right. Enjoy the pizza, guys. Anybody online? Okay.
Yeah, you can smell the pizza sitting outside and waiting at the moment. Before we close off, is there anything anyone wants to add, comments, suggest for the next meetup? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Everything's just reusable. Yeah. Yeah.
I think when SharePoint, Michael, SharePoint The whole idea is the way you put and use the low cost, but the whole thing is the way you create the application architecture generically in this way.
It's quite powerful.
Yeah, look, not my design. Once you start working on it and understanding it, and I still don't understand it, it works.
No, perfect. Awesome, everyone. Thank you. Grab some pizzas and snacks, and we'll see you all next month. Thanks all.